On Friday, South Africa launched a case at the United Nations top court accusing Israel of genocide against Palestinians in Gaza. South Africa is asking the court to order Israel to halt its bombardment of the narrow strip, which has killed 22,000 people, heavily including women and children, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. Today, the Israeli government said it would contest South Africa's genocide accusations, calling the filing, quote, an absurd blood libel. The move by South Africa is the first such challenge made at the court over the current war. It's also far from the first time South Africa has sided with the Palestinian cause. For decades, South African leaders have likened the plight of Palestinians to that of South Africa's black majority during the apartheid era from 1948 to 1991, a period when Israel supported the white South African apartheid regime. South Africa's ruling African National Congress, the party of South Africa's best-known freedom fighter and first post-apartheid president, Nelson Mandela, has deep ties to the Palestinian Liberation Organization. After Mandela's release from prison in 1990, he was a vocal supporter of the PLO and its leader, Yasser Arafat. Mandela also declared that Palestine was the greatest moral issue of our time. His support for the Palestinian cause is perhaps more relevant today than ever before, as his country, 10 years after his death, accuses Israel of genocide. South Africa's filing also comes as Israel's National Security Minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, and Israeli Finance Minister, Bezalel Smotrich, have said the quiet part out loud, expressing support for evicting Palestinians en masse from the Gaza Strip. At his party's meeting, Ben-Gvir said the war presents an opportunity to concentrate on encouraging the migration of the residents of Gaza, while Smotrich said Palestinians leaving Gaza would make way for Israelis who could, quote, make the desert bloom. The Biden State Department has condemned the statements, calling them inflammatory and irresponsible. Now, it should be noted that the mass transfer of populations from their homeland is not just irresponsible talk. It could be considered ethnic cleansing under international law, and doing so by creating unlivable conditions that essentially force mass immigration could be considered genocide. We will stay on this story as it develops.
Was one that we did to get a read on the community. I have never seen in the 27 years we've been polling, my brother and I have been polling Arab Americans, we never saw a movement this dramatic over this short a period of time. The last time we polled Arab Americans was just a few months ago, and the drop since then has been even more precipitous than the drop since 2020. This issue resonates. It's big. It's important. It also is part of a general national trend. Arab Americans are not immune from what the rest of the culture is feeling, and that is that President Biden just is not in control of his own presidency and how he is being portrayed to the American people and to the world. They didn't elect a Reaganite foreign policy advocate, a neocon who was fighting for freedom there to have freedom here, that kind of rhetoric that comes from the White House. They voted for somebody that focus on a whole bunch of domestic issues to bring domestic peace and tranquility after 4 years of Donald Trump. And that's not what they've gotten. And I think that, coupled with the Gaza situation, most certainly is driving these negative numbers. They are deeply disappointed with the position he's taken on this conflict, and they just are jumping ship. Really significant was that across the board, when you get numbers that high, a flip that high, or numbers in the 70% range on several questions like support for a ceasefire, or how important is the Palestinian issue to you, or how disappointed are you with the president's performance on this issue, all of those numbers were 2/3 or greater. When you get numbers that great, you expect across the board to see the crosstabs reading that way, and we did. There was virtually no difference in terms of majorities, regardless of religion, regardless of whether born here or immigrant, or a gender or age. Pretty much across the board, there's frustration and deep disappointment with this president. And the question I keep getting asked is, can Biden win him back? The visceral reaction to this issue is so great that in order to do that, something dramatic has to come from the White House. And I'm not sure that the president has the wherewithal to do it. Look, I've heard two things from people at the White House. The one is they're not going to vote for Donald Trump because they don't want, they don't want back what he was doing during his 4 years. And so they'll come around in a year. I told them that when I heard that, I said, that's insulting and dismissive. You have to earn that vote. They might just as well stay home. They might vote for Cornel West. They might just not vote at all. And it's not a given that young Arab American women who want control over their bodies and their health care, that older Arab Americans who want protection for their Medicare or an expansion of health care, it's not clear that they're going to make the decision to vote at all if they don't have something to vote for. It worked the last time. Vote for me because I'm not the other guy. I'm not quite sure it'll work. It'll work this time. And I've got an article coming out in The Nation tomorrow that makes the point that it's not just Arab Americans who are affected this way. It's young people, it's progressive Jews, it's Black, Latino, Asian voters. There's a significant decline that this president is encountering across the board. And Gaza is playing into it. It is a sort of a canary in the coal mine issue. It's one that sort of is the speaking to a broader sense of dissatisfaction, and the White House has to get a handle on that and not just dismiss it. The damage done by George W. Bush, the disappointment in Obama making promises in Cairo that excited people and then blaming the Arabs for not delivering on the promises he made, and then Trump and the chaos of 4 years. People have told me we've been on a roller coaster with your country for the last 20 years, and frankly, we're dizzy right now. We don't know what we're getting. They too hoped for calm when Joe Biden got elected, and instead of calm, they have two big wars, and they're being forced to choose. And frankly, they can't, because they have decided, as European countries are deciding, that they have to make their own decisions, and they have to do what's in their interest. And their people are watching what is happening in Gaza and saying, hell no, we're not going to do this anymore. Even countries that have made peace with Israel, their public opinion has turned decidedly against Israel and decidedly against the prospect of living in harmony with that country. Damage has been done here. And I don't understand, in all of my conversations with people at the White House and the State Department, that they don't just get it. I don't know what they're taking in the morning that makes them think today is going to be a better day. Israel's going to kill more people, and Arabs are going to say, let's have peace with Israel. That it doesn't work that way. And I've been down this road now for the last 40, 50 years doing this work full time. And frankly, it gets worse, not better. And those who think you win a victory in a war where you kill lots of civilians, their heads aren't screwed on right. And frankly, we need new thinking on this. But the guys in the White House aren't capable, I think, of that kind of new thinking. And it's deeply disturbing, because the hole we're digging is one it's going to take a generation to get out of.
Jim Zogby, I wanted to ask you a few quick questions. I see you have a TV behind you, and I was looking to see if there was a crack in the screen, because I was wondering of your comments on the coverage by the mainstream media, a word you almost never hear. And I'm not talking about Fox. I'm talking about MSNBC and CNN, places where you appear. Rarely do we hear the word occupation. And why that is so significant in understanding how to end this. We're not just talking about Gaza, we're talking about the West Bank. When you had the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, saying right before October 7th, you know, it's peaceful there in the Middle East, we're moving on to other issues. Yet at that time, you had at least a Palestinian a day being killed in the West Bank by settlers or by the Israeli military. Now, I think since October 7th, the number is well over 150. The OPT, the Occupied Palestinian Territories, Gaza and the West Bank. Question how we should be talking about this issue, what you think would be the most honest, and do you think there's a difference between Biden and Trump, not on other domestic issues, but on Israel-Palestine?
Joe Biden promised us a lot. He issued not just a platform plank that was one that they made some accommodations to us about, but they issued a separate policy statement for Arab Americans. And I remember when we wanted language that talked about the equality of human needs and rights, and they issued that statement that both Israelis and Palestinians are equally deserving of, and then there were a litany of words that followed it. 3.5 years later, we're still waiting for the delivery on the equal promise of. All the Palestinians have gotten has been a green light for Israel to run roughshod over the West Bank, take more land, build more settlements, demolish more homes, more restrictions on Palestinian rights. Jerusalem the same, and Gaza worse. It's been a huge disappointment, and frankly, I don't. I recall some interesting things in the platform debate that still troubled me, because I remember back in '88 when I was negotiating with Madeleine Albright on the Dukakis-Jackson platform issue, we wanted the word Palestinian in the platform, and she told me, she said, if the P word even appears in print, in the Democratic Party platform, all hell will break loose. I told her, I said, don't play Chicken Little with me. The sky's not going to fall. We can do it and get it and live with it. I mean, it's not rocket science to say there are Palestinians in this conflict. The party had never even mentioned the word up till then, and it didn't that year either. What troubled me in 2016 and 2020 was that we couldn't get the word occupation in the platform. They wouldn't use the word occupation, which was Trump language. Trump wouldn't use occupation either. In fact, they changed the Human Rights Report from reporting on the occupied territories to putting it all in one thing. That was the green, what do you call it? The U.S. Ambassador Friedman, Trump's ambassador, wanted it that way. There was no occupation. The Biden administration deals with it as if it were an occupation in language, but not in practice. Not in practice. We have not put conditions or terms on Israel to deal with Palestinians as an occupied people. And so we've kind of come a ways, but we haven't come anywhere at all. From not using the P word to not using the occupation word. Frankly, it's maybe a little bit of a semantic thing, but Palestinians are living under a brutal occupation. It's an apartheid occupation. And they are also being victims of a genocidal attack on Gaza right now that is killing the infrastructure, killing the people, forcibly evicting over 1 million people from their homes in the north to move south, where there is no capacity to care for them. They're living in tents without water, without power, without health care. The hospitals in the south are not capable of dealing with all the issues. And the Israelis are treating the people in the north as if, as the general says, they're all animals and deserve to die. If that's not genocide, I don't know what is. And yet this administration, if they can't use the word occupation, and for God's sake, they won't use the word apartheid, they can't use the word genocide. Something horrible is happening to these people. And this administration is turning a blind eye to it. And I'm sorry, but when they say we're deeply concerned, if that's the best they can do, when we're providing 14.3 billion additional this year on top of 4 billion, when we're providing diplomatic cover at the United Nations, that is not enough. And frankly, what is happening in Gaza is not only happening on our watch, but we're complicit and enabling it. Sounds harsh, but it's the reality, and they have to deal with it. And there are going to be electoral consequences. And I wish it weren't so. Last thing on earth I want to see is a Republican of the type of Donald Trump or whoever comes after in the White House. But they have to earn the vote and establish that there's a difference. They haven't done it.